Hey everybody, we are here live. Blair Nightingale coming at you Thursday night, 6 p.m., same time, same channel, right here. Glad to see you guys. This is the Stock Talk Thursday episode on Bitcoin. I mentioned on Monday that we were going to talk today about Bitcoin. We have actually done a previous episode. If you go back in the history, if you are on YouTube with us, you can head over there if you are not, and you can go back. We've done an episode on Bitcoin, a little bit more of what it is and diving into that. But I thought, you know what? Bitcoin has been in the news a lot lately. Some people out there have been saying some things that I think are pretty interesting in terms of adoption. So I want to go back to that tonight and take a look at Bitcoin. We'll cover a little bit of what it is, how it's changed, what does it look like. We're actually going to go over and look at a Bitcoin chart tonight so that I can show you exactly what is happening in the price. It's kind of at an interesting spot. So we're going to look at that as well as look at some of those news items, those noteworthy news items that have come up over the last little while since we last spoke about Bitcoin. But before we get into everything, I am going to just say thank you once again for being here. And you can always jump in right here, comment, ask any questions. Let me know that you're here. Let me know where you're from. If you have any questions as we are going through, pop them in there because I'm going to come back periodically and I will get a chance to answer those questions. This is something that we don't necessarily talk about a lot around here at Tradeway. I've got my Tradeway shirt on tonight. It's my Tradeway swag. I haven't worn the shirt in a while, but if you aren't familiar with us, this is our Tradeway broadcast on Thursday nights. Okay, we've got stuff going on all through the week, but we focus specifically on stocks and options in the U.S. stock market. So Bitcoin isn't something that we are normally working with our tens of thousands of students on, but it is noteworthy. It is an investment that a lot of people are talking about and getting into. And it is something that I think we can take some time tonight and look at. And of course, as always on these episodes, decide, Bitcoin, for me, is it hot or not? And that is where we're going to land tonight. So I invite you to just take the journey with me. And as I said, we're going to get into the chart. Before we finish up tonight, we'll look specifically at the chart so I can show you where it's at right now. It's insane what's happened with this particular, I was going to say stock. It's not a stock. And that's, of course, the question a lot of people ask. Well, what is it? We're going to get to that. But when I say it's insane, it's a very emotional statement. What does that mean? Well, Bitcoin from approximately a year ago, okay, roughly speaking, not very long ago, it's up over 800%, okay? 56,000. I'm going to actually pull the date on this here so I can get you. I may not have the exact date on this. We'll look at it on the chart as well. But, just a year ago, in fact, let me just quickly check this. 1 year ago, March, not even a year ago, March, Bitcoin was around $9,000. And at the low, around, let's see, March 13th. Okay, so not exactly a year. March 13th, Bitcoin was at about $3,000 to $4,000. Okay, $3,000 to $4,000 last March. We're knocking on the door of April, aren't we? But the beginning, middle of March, $3,000, $4,000 now valued at, as we speak, $51,867. So that's a pretty big jump, isn't it? In 1 year, that's a massive, massive jump. So that's something that gets a lot of people talking, all right? A lot of people interested, a lot of people thinking, well, what is going on? And I talked about in our last episode again, more in depth on what is it, tell me a little bit more, and you can go back and see some of that in that episode. But really, one of the things I talk about, and that's important to understand in this conversation around Bitcoin and what we call cryptocurrencies, because Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. Mario, I see you there, getting some comments in there. It's a cryptocurrency, and there are many cryptocurrencies, but this is kind of the flagship crypto, okay? Bitcoin, or BTC, is the symbol for Bitcoin. It's really the flagship. It's the leader of the pack. It's just been the most popular, and it's the one that, and this is what I mentioned before in our other broadcasts, and I think is very important, looking at adoption. Okay, can cryptocurrency, in this case, of course, Bitcoin, can it make a jump from this fringe, brand new digital currency, this investment vehicle? Because some people are looking at it more as a legitimate currency. The world someday, people get very zealous for this when it comes to Bitcoin. The world someday will adopt Bitcoin, and they have all these passionate reasons as to why that should be. We're not going to so much go into that tonight, except that what's important is some companies are adopting more and more different ways of engaging with Bitcoin. Some retailers are accepting Bitcoin for payment. As it becomes a more substantiated or accepted part of our world economic system, the speculation on its value rises. And so those things cause Bitcoin to go up. So we've seen a little bit more of that adoption happen, and that's something that we need to keep in mind in this conversation. So the Bitcoin market has exploded vertically in the chart, but part of that is that it's being adopted out there. So you and I, maybe you're out there tonight, you're hearing about it a little bit more, you're curious to know more about it. You're wondering, is this an investment opportunity? Is this a kind of money we're going to be adopting? What do I really need to know about this? And ultimately, I'm going to just say this. Let's keep it really simple when we come to defining what it really is, okay? So it is basically Bitcoin. It is a digital, as I mentioned, digital currency. It is not a physical currency. Now, if you were on with Ben Mitchell and I several weeks ago, he was on here as well about a week ago, talking about money. Not all of our U.S. money supply has a physical representation, right? It's not all in paper money and coins. So the jump to the idea of a currency that doesn't have a strict physical representation actually isn't as big of a jump as some of us may have initially thought that it was, but it still can seem strange. What do you mean? It's only digital. And there are some more pieces to this where people use massive computers, powerful computers, to actually mine Bitcoin, but it's only digitally mined. Did you know there's only a finite amount of Bitcoin as well? It has not all been mined yet, right? This is part of this program that was started decades ago now. I'm going to say probably not 2 full decades, but a long time ago, 15, 18 something years ago, where this all started, where a finite amount of coins was set, okay? So they're actually still mining these coins. So there's aspects of this that seem kind of strange for something digital. And yet in some ways, it's not that far from our currency system that, while much more integrated in our lives and much more adopted and regulated, which is something we're going to talk about, as far as not having a physical representation, not that different. So Bitcoin is essentially like a file. It's like a file on your computer, okay, that you store in what they call a digital wallet. Bitcoin is transferred to and from your digital wallet, okay? If you're going to own Bitcoin and keep it on your computer or whatever device, it's got to be in what's called a wallet. So that's an app on your phone or your computer. And then people can send Bitcoins to your wallet. You can send Bitcoins to other people. And here's the thing, you may have heard this idea of blockchain technology, which is definitely beyond the scope of what we need to look at tonight. But the whole idea of blockchain is that anytime a transaction happens in Bitcoin between these wallets, it is automatically added to a ledger. Every single transaction is added to a ledger where it's recorded and it cannot be removed. Now, this is part of the reason that some people feel that this is so revolutionary, it's so important. You can't remove transactions. You can't cook the books in that sense, as they say. So that's part of just what this Bitcoin is. But for you and me, more so, probably the reason we've been hearing about it is because, like I said, only a short time ago, the coins were worth very, very little in comparison to what they are now. So more and more people are looking at this as not so much a currency, that is a big part of the conversation, but they're looking at it as an investment vehicle. Is this something I should invest in? Some people trade Bitcoin and different kinds of cryptocurrencies, but a lot of people are just investing. They're buying the coins. At this point, it would cost you, as we said, this current quote here, if I get it right, it'll cost you about $52,000 to buy one single Bitcoin, okay? Now, you can buy a portion of that. You could go and buy $50 of Bitcoin, okay? Now, obviously, if you buy only a fraction, in that case, a very small fraction of Bitcoin, you would only, of course, appreciate or depreciate according to that small fraction as well. If you want a penny for penny win or loss on Bitcoin, then you need to own at least a full coin, okay? So with that said, it's a focus on the investment vehicle more so than it is as a currency. But it's kind of interesting because the two are connected. You know, I just found this out. I didn't know this. Let me get back here so I can see any comments. I did not know this. AT&T in 2019 began accepting Bitcoin. Okay, a couple of really interesting things. You guys may have heard the owner of Tesla. Okay, Elon Musk. He has recently tweeted saying, you can now buy a Tesla with Bitcoin, which is very interesting if you think about it, because the currency, Bitcoin, is so volatile. And I'm going to show you that when we look at a chart. Volatile meaning it moves up and down pretty dramatically. It doesn't stay mostly stable, okay? Not even with, minor fluctuations or even what I might say a medium-sized amount of volatility, right? A bit of a fluctuation happening in there, but we're talking wild swings, okay? We're talking wild swings in the price, certainly that we've seen in the past and even what we're seeing right now. So for a retailer to take Bitcoin could be taking something that's pretty unstable. For me, paying in Bitcoin, you might be paying with something that's not going to be worth nearly that much tomorrow or next month or next year. You might be paying something that could be worth significantly more. And so as these retailers adopt this, then there is, again, that increase in perceived value, and it has been driving up the stock. But here, or driving up the coins, I say this a lot every day. Talk about stocks all day long with students, and now I'm coming in here and I gotta switch on over to Bitcoin. You hear me saying stocks. We've got somebody saying Musk must have known you were talking about Bitcoin to make the Tesla announcement today. I don't know if the announcement was specifically today. I don't believe that it was just today. I see. This is Jeffrey joining us on YouTube, of course. I don't know if that was specifically today that he said that, Jeffrey, but it was recently. It was definitely recently. Now, here's the thing. This is very interesting. This is something you need to know about Bitcoin, okay? Little piece of dust in front of me there. Bitcoin is something people use as an investment vehicle, meaning I can buy it. I would like to buy low, sell high. That's the basic approach to any investment that we do, right? This being a vehicle to do that. We're not necessarily going to use it for anything else, but let me buy some, see if it appreciates, and then I can sell it. Of course, that's what speculating is all about in stocks, options, Bitcoin in this case, real estate. You want to buy low, you want to sell high. But anytime you're working with investments, you have to consider, how am I going to be taxed? Now, I'm not going to go deep diving into taxes here, okay? I am a licensed advisor. Taxes are not my forte, right? That is not my area of specialty. We are going to do some more episodes coming up as we get closer, further into the spring on taxes. However, what I want you to know tonight about Bitcoin is this is very interesting, okay? Bitcoin actually is not taxed the same way as stocks. So when you use Bitcoin to purchase a good or service, so let's say you were going to actually use it to buy that Tesla, right? Elon Musk says you can buy a Tesla with these coins, and you say, okay, I want a Tesla. I want the new whatever, right? You're going to use this to purchase the car. Well, guess what? The IRS considers you purchasing the car a taxable event. It treats Bitcoin and other coins like this, right? Remember, I said this is one of many coins, but it's really the main one. It's sort of the flagship, as I mentioned. It considers it property. And when you actually pay for something, it's no longer in your possession. You purchase the vehicle. Now it's considered selling that property. You sold that property for the car in the case of buying the Tesla or whatever it was. See, because it's not categorized the same way as other currency and money. See, when I take US dollars, okay, my wallet's over on the table there, but I've got several bills in there. If I take those dollars, as you know, and spend them, that's not a taxable event, right? Because it's not an investment, but this is still considered to be an investment vehicle. So when I sell it, it's considered a taxable event. So I may buy something, but when that happens, it kicks in a taxable event. That's something I thought was very, very interesting about Bitcoin. Now, that may be something that's taxable. You depending on what you bought it at, what was the principal cost? When did you buy it? How long have you held it? And were you selling it, in this case, to Elon Musk, right? If we keep going with that illustration, was that at a loss or was that at a gain? And so that's true of any investment that we liquidate as a taxable event. We need to know, well, what was my cost basis? How much did I make or lose? And how long did I hold it? Because we've got long-term and short-term capital gains. So you need to know that if you had Bitcoin and you purchase something, at least as it is today, that would actually be the sale of property. That would be the sale of property. And if done so at a profit from when you first bought it, then that means taxes would be owed on that. Now, there are exchanges that you would never actually even have. I've actually done this. Okay, the last time Bitcoin made a big run, gosh, this was 2018, I think late 2017, 2018. Bitcoin was something that I traded in a cryptocurrency trading account, all right? Not my normal stocks and options trading account. It was in a cryptocurrency trading account. That particular platform was Coinbase. There are many. In fact, in researching for this session tonight, I found that there are way more exchanges than I thought, not just brokers, but exchanges. Okay. That's a very big difference from stocks and options here trading on the exchanges in the United States, where there's only really a few major exchanges, where over to the cryptocurrency, there are many, hundreds even of exchanges. And, I'll say this too while I'm on that point. Is it safe? That's a question we might ask at this point. Is it safe? What are you really saying about this as an opportunity for me, Blair? Is it safe? And I would say we have to define safe. Okay. So first of all, is there any investment that is no risk? Well, of course, no. The answer is no. If there's no risk whatsoever, there's no return. That is an irrefutable law in our world. If there is no risk, there's no return. If there's low risk, then there's low return. High risk, high return. So we want to know how to control that. So no risk, no, that's out the window. But the question is it low risk or high risk? Well, that depends a little bit on what we choose to do with it. Of course, here at Tradeway, as I mentioned, we don't focus on the Bitcoin markets. We don't focus on the cryptocurrency markets. And one of those reasons is that it's emerging, it's new, it's extremely volatile. I'm going to show you, as I mentioned, the chart where Bitcoin could lose a tremendous amount of value in a very short amount of time. Now, obviously, it's popular because it can gain a lot of value in a short amount of time. And a lot has happened over this last year, as we've seen, and we're going to look at the chart, but it can lose a lot. It is not regulated in the way that our stock market is regulated. There are a lot of things in place that are in place to protect investors and traders. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean people can't go and lose a lot of money in Wall Street, right? I say trading is never guessing, gambling, or going for it. We've got to have a skill set to manage risk. Could that be applied in the Bitcoin market? It could be applied over there. And if you were effective at managing risk, you knew the skill sets and the disciplines of trading, you could apply that to protect yourself in any market. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all markets are created equal. I mentioned earlier that I have a securities license, okay? Part of what helps me do what I do is that the government says, Blair, you need to have a specific license so that you have a certain amount of knowledge about the things you're talking about. But here, let me give you some insight on this. Most of it is about all the rules and regulations and laws that are in place to protect you. That's really the majority of what that whole thing is about, right? That license covers majority of it, covers that side of things. Well, why do I say that? What does that have to do with Bitcoin? Ultimately, Bitcoin's a little bit Wild West, okay? They don't necessarily have the same level of oversight and regulation. Now, I'm not a huge fan of government intervention and overregulation, okay? But it's definitely a space where there are unique risks. And that is a part of the systematic risk that I think investors need to know about, traders need to know about. It is extreme volatility, which gives you the ability for big profits, but also big drawdowns, big losses as well. Another thing is, you may have, in fact, I'm trying to remember his name now. It just comes to mind in the moment. There was an individual who was petitioning a city. This is in the United States. If he could go and look through their landfill for a computer, a hard drive that he threw out. Quick Google search, you guys would find this story. He threw out this computer in, I think, the mid 2005, 2007, somewhere around that time, when Bitcoin was worth very, very little. And what was on his hard drive in his wallet, remember I said it's in a wallet, but it's digital only, right? He doesn't have access to it. So he wants to find the hard drives, which is worth many, many millions of dollars now. And last I heard, when I looked at the story, the municipality municipality, the city, was not allowing him to go and do that. Point being, that's a bit of a risk as well, okay? There is not a global connected system that attributes the money that you have in Bitcoin to you, and you have some kind of recourse to get it. It's more like if I had $1 million cash in a duffel bag and I lost the duffel bag. If you lose it, it's gone, okay? If the money's in an exchange, like I mentioned earlier then that's a little bit, if the exchange is reputable and the exchange has, an agreement that you can actually, know what is yours, where it is, how to access it, that's different. Now, I'm stopping shy of defending any exchanges out there. I don't speak for them. Any brokers that work in cryptocurrency, I'm not necessarily vouching for that tonight. I can only say that that's a little bit different. You've actually got your Bitcoin and the value of your money attached to an established and major exchange. So that's a little bit different as well. Bitcoin is really emerging. I think you can probably tell even from our discussion tonight, there's a lot of pieces here that are getting louder, right? Bitcoin's not just going away, but at the same time, it's really emerging in a lot of ways. Wall Street is wrestling with, okay, are we going to adopt some financial products that actually are influenced by Bitcoin? We talk about options a little bit here mostly on Market Mondays, Stock Talk Thursdays as well, a little bit options, that being what we call a derivative. It's a contract that is traded on Wall Street that derives its value from a stock, okay? Well, futures contracts, very similar to an option, derive its value from different kinds of commodities, okay? They work a little bit different, but they're very similar. Well, there are actually Bitcoin futures contracts, okay? And those have been around for a little while. Those have been adopted, and they're being adopted a little bit more even. So even Wall Street is starting to kind of go, okay, what is this? There's certainly a lot of money in the Bitcoin markets. So they're sort of coming together now. So for you and I to understand, this is something, at least as of right now, it's not really going away. And the opportunity is there in some ways, but it's also understanding what those risks are. So knowing that there's extreme volatility here, knowing that, some exchanges are not going to be as reputable as other exchanges, knowing that that is very much developing, and also knowing, even as I was researching for this, I saw an article, and here's the title, everybody. The title of this article says, Bitcoin could go to 300, or Bitcoin investor, Bitcoin analyst says Bitcoin could go to $300,000, but once the bubble bursts, it's going to be down for a long, long time. Okay, now I'm not necessarily going to point fingers at this individual, but I think it's important for you guys to understand, especially if you go and you want to research this a little bit more. You want to watch out for those headlines, because let's deconstruct that a little bit and then we'll jump over to the charts. What are they trying to say? Well, it's at $56,000, $58,000, $51,000 right now. To think it's going to go to 300. Well, you think that's going to interest some people? Now, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't go to 300. I don't know what this individual is basing it off of, but the headline is meant to be a hook for you and me. Wow, 300,000. This guy says 300,000, man. He must know what he's talking about. It's going to 300,000. I got to get some of that. And then he says, once the bubble bursts, we're not going to get another chance. It's going to crash. It's going to crumble. It's going to blow up. And I won't get another chance for a long time. And the psychology there is this is financial news. You see that kind of stuff all the time, you guys. It's like, get out there and do something right now. Buy Bitcoin right now is what these articles are pushing. And if you don't do it right now, it's going to crumble and you're going to miss everything. And it's like just pulling on the strings of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. And that is not how we want to buy anything. Now, This episode is not Blair's recommendation that everybody go out and buy Bitcoin. But what I'm saying is you may hear some people who are going to say, buy it now, buy a lot, do not wait. Guess what? That person probably owns a lot of Bitcoin, right? That's something that if I did that, the government would call that front running, right? I'm talking to you about Bitcoin tonight. I'm not even allowed to go and buy Bitcoin after this broadcast because that would be front running. If I came on here and I said, Bitcoin is this and that, and it's so good and you should buy it, and I own a bunch, the idea is that if I get a lot of people to buy it, right, then it actually appreciates, which benefits me. And so we've got to be careful with financial news. Again, I'm not trying to point the finger at any one person in particular, but I do want you guys to understand that's how a lot of this stuff works. And this is an area that is not regulated. It is not regulated. Some of that stuff is helpful because it's meant to protect you. Let's see. Jeffrey is saying, are there circuit breakers in Bitcoin? Okay, so now getting into that, let's go ahead and throw up the chart here because I want you guys to be able to see where it's actually at right now. Okay, so we've got the chart up here. This is the Bitcoin chart right now, okay? And we're looking, here's December, November, much more flat. And then just coming into mid-December, this thing really starts to take off again. So Jeffrey says, are there breakers? What does that mean? Well, we've talked about it in terms of stocks before, and I can understand why Jeffrey's bringing this question up. Because in the U.S. exchanges, right, the stock market, let's take the S&P 500, which we've talked about on here many times. If the S&P 500, the index of the overall market, shows that the index is falling, right? It's falling far and it's falling fast. We saw this happen multiple times last March during the COVID shutdowns when they initially happened, right? The whole economy stopped, so the market tanked. Well, we know there's been some pretty big crashes in history, right? There's been lots of crashes, but the big ones, 1929, we had, I think it's Black Monday in the late 80s. We had the financial crisis of 2008. We had the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, 2001. So the market tanks. And what Wall Street has to do is halt trading, like a breaker in your home, right? There's a power surge. It's going to start a fire. It's going to ruin something. It's going to fry the circuits. It cuts off the power to save the system from collapse. That's what a breaker does. The market has breaker levels. It halts trading for 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Eventually, if it keeps falling, it'll breaker for the day. That's true on the upside as well, by the way. It can be when it goes down. It can be when it goes up. But this is something, the Bitcoin market does not have anything like that, okay? I actually had a friend who did a lot of this trading, right? In Bitcoin. This is back in 2017, okay? When it was very volatile at that time. And he had done this for quite some time and had decided, you know, the volatility in this market allows for some great possibilities, but it's so high and it had become so unpredictably wild, it was no longer worth the risk. I'm not necessarily saying that's where it's at today, but there is no breaker system. There's nothing like that. So understanding the risks, once again, is the main point of tonight's episode. That if you're going to look at something like this, just make sure you understand good risk management. The disciplines of trading and investing, depending on what you're doing, are very important. And some of those safety structures that are in place for you when it comes to your capital and your positions when you're trading, for example, in the US stock markets, which we are normally talking about here at Tradeway, you don't have that in place in Bitcoin, at least not at this point in time. Now, some of the exchanges out there that you could trade on, perhaps some of them have a system like that in place. I have never seen that. I have not heard of that. So that is something that you would definitely want to look at and you want to know. Can't remember the password to his wallet with millions in Bitcoin on it. Certainly, that's part of the risk here, right? You don't have a system that gives you recourse if you were to lose some of this. Now, I also want to back up a little bit and say, I'm not trying to instill fear tonight. Hey, if you go out and you buy some Bitcoin, you're just going to lose it. But you could lose it. And looking at risk for me as a coach and as an investor, it doesn't mean that it always is saying don't do it. But I would always say don't do it if you don't understand what the risks are. That's the last thing that you want to have. So let's take a look at this for a second, okay? Here's something I want to say about Bitcoin that if I go back, in fact, I'm going to switch this up and make every candlestick a week. Okay. So here we are. Remember I said 2017, 2018. Now you can see where my cursor is there at about almost $20,000. I came into our office not far from where I am tonight in the studio. I was managing Tradeway at the time, and I came into the office in the morning and we had Bitcoin's price up on a screen, much like the screen I have behind me here. And it seemed like it was just clocking $1,000 just every couple of minutes. So fast, so fast, so fast, so fast. Bam, it hit 20,000 and tanked, right? Not all in that day, obviously. It didn't tank all in that day. It just never made it above that. So it went from 20,000. I know people who purchased Bitcoin in the 19,000, 19,005 area. Right? And then what did it do? Well, it actually got as low as $2,800, right? Multiple times. It makes a bit of a recovery in 2019 and then falls again. Okay. Now, if you were just saying, I put some money into this and I'm going to assume that that money is not going to move and I can afford to take the risk on that, then somebody may have just weathered that whole storm. They may have held it that whole time. But being at $20,000 and falling to $2,000 is not fun. It's not fun. So that was some pretty extreme volatility. And of course, it continued for some time until, as I mentioned, now we're looking at a weekly chart here, meaning every one of these candlesticks is a week. Let's go back to our daily chart. And we've actually got, as some of my students out there can recognize, we've actually got a pretty decent looking pattern here, okay? And it's been this way for a while. Now, it's certainly volatile, but notice the skill set that we've been looking at here and on Market Mondays for over a year now, okay? This is really the preview, the outline, the skeleton, if you will, of what this skill set is built on. We're looking for patterns. We're looking for patterns, and those patterns help us identify pivot points. Because if I can identify pivot points, then it initiates a process for me as a trader or an investor of assessing how can I take advantage of that pivot while protecting my money. That's what learning to trade and trading really is. Well, what we've got here is a pattern. Okay, this is going pretty darn close to this blue line, this 50-day moving average and moving up. And these movements, if you owned a full coin, these movements are approximately $20,000 each. Okay, now this is over a series of days. So this one, you're looking at March 1st to the peak there, which is March 14th. So that was 2 weeks. Here you're looking more, if you go from support here, February 2nd, to the time we hit actual resistance here, we went higher, but that's just shy of 3 weeks as well. Now, of course, it kept going and then it came down and hit here, which then was the 28th. And like I said, from there, you've got almost 3 weeks again. So we're looking at about $20,000, 3 weeks with this pattern. In no way am I guaranteeing or suggesting that's exactly what it has to do again. but that's what it's been doing. This is the pattern that it's in right now. Okay. Today, just today, this candlestick opened at 52,259. Okay. And right now we're at 51,429. So if you bought this morning, you're down about $1,000. Not quite, right? If you bought only a fraction of that, then obviously only a fraction of that movement would account to your investment. But we're talking some big numbers here when you're at a $50,000 coin, okay? This is just the nature of the beast. But making sense of where we're at, given this pattern, we are down at this support level. So anytime we see this happen, there are a few things we have to learn to know. I don't just go out. Let's just say this was a stock that I was looking at today. I don't just go out and buy it. There's some things I got to see. I got to see some things to know that I am going to buy it, because the saying that has been around Wall Street for a long time, it would be true here, and it certainly is helpful, comes up a lot, is don't try to catch a falling knife, right? Don't try to catch the falling knife. Why? Well, you just might get sliced, right? That's not what we want. You might as well just let it fall to the ground. And when it hits the ground and holds, then we can pay closer attention, right? Then we might go ahead and try and pick it up. But until then, we don't want to catch a falling knife. Right now, this thing is still falling, all right? It's still falling. It's in an interesting area, and it certainly has formed a pattern. You know, it's really staggering to look at what has happened over this entire time as I scroll way out here. Even there, the amount of movement I was just looking at the time, that was enormous. So this is pretty spectacular, no question, seeing this move this way. So I hope tonight has helped illuminate to another level. We could go on and on. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to these cryptocurrencies, because there are other kinds, as I've mentioned, of cryptocurrencies that are very popular. But really, a lot of them follow and mirror what's happening in this Bitcoin or BTC market, okay? Interesting to see that it's in a pattern. Interesting to see in the days ahead if there is more widespread adoption of this asset. Remember that if you ever did spend it, it would actually be a taxable event, just like any property or investment that is sold, maybe at a profit, maybe at a loss. It would have different tax implications depending on if you actually made any money on it or if you lost money. But what an interesting thought that if you and I were to think of this solely as currency, we wouldn't consider that buying a Tesla would actually cost us the Bitcoin, but it may also cost us for the tax man as well. So definitely something interesting to think about, okay? If you are interested, okay, we have something coming up. I'm going to pop the link in there. When we are on these Thursday broadcasts, these Monday broadcasts, I'm talking specifically about trading, talking about improving your financial life, talking about what's going on inside of me and what's going on in my specific endeavors, usually, of course, in the markets, learning the skill sets and disciplines of trading, investing, as I said. Our founder and CEO, David Mitchell, and his good and close friend, Mr. Myron Golden, the most astounding, motivational, Bible teaching businessman that I've ever met. They are going to be doing a special event this weekend. It's called the Level Up. We are not shutting down. We are leveling up. I am so fired up about this year. You guys know if you've been on here before, I just moved back to Texas from Southern California. God bless Southern California, but I'm back in Texas and I'm just feeling the fire on my life to use everything that God has put at my disposal to the very utmost of what I can. I'm committed to going to another level. I'm diving into my trading like I haven't in a long time. I'm working with coaches in multiple areas of my life. I'm going after my spiritual life like I haven't in a long time. And I'm looking to get leveled up. And if you think that leveling up in other areas of your life is disconnected from what happens between you and the markets, you and your money, then that is a mistake to think. It is a mistake for me and you to think that it's all compartmentalized, because of course, other things that I establish in my life influence the way that I behave in the markets. I know this because it has affected me, and I work with traders all the time. If you want to be good with your money, you got to be good with your heart, and that is something that we can work on. We're going to do that this weekend at our Level Up event. I will pop that in there. Jeffrey's saying, I will see you this weekend. I've heard Myron. I've heard David. I work for Tradeway. I've been around them lots. And I am not going to miss this because I know it is going to give me a blast of clarity and power to go ahead and smash the goals this year that I want, not just for my sake, but for the people around me. Because I always say, when I'm better, the people that matter to me most get better from me. So that's an investment that's worth making. That said, thank you guys so much for being on here. I will pop that link in there momentarily, so watch for that. Join us at the Level Up event, and I will see you guys on Monday. Good night.